I would like to welcome everyone to the spring semester. I hope that you had a chance to relax and enjoy the break. Some of you have been seeing this picture, and I know it's been on our website for a while, but you may not know the story and the background of Renee Spivak. Renee came to UWM having been homeschooled and had 5 siblings. Her parents had not gone to college, and they wanted her and her siblings to have that opportunity. She had always been interested in the night sky, and when she came to UWM, she found through our astrophysics program remarkable areas in which she could shine. She graduated in December in astrophysics with a minor in French. Her research was quite successful. She's received NSF funding to take her to Italy and Australia to advance her work. She continues today as a graduate student in international pulsar research. She represents so many things that are important, as you can see in the title, about the momentum that we have, and as one of 27,000 of our success stories, she represents well the importance of our research, our student success, and our ability to engage. One of the things that Renee did while she was here was help advance work in a program called SPOT, which stands for Space Public Outreach Teams, where our students, graduate and undergraduate, go into high schools and middle schools and talk to students about careers in science and physics. Just remarkable the types of things that she has done along with others. Professors Don Erb, Xavier Siemens, and David Kaplan were essential for her success. So there's a number of things that are just remarkable about this, but it does, I think, stress the criticality of many of the things that we do. As I share with you the structure of our talk today, I will continue to touch upon those themes that Renee's story shares. You'll see videos, you'll see a number of different people talking about this from their perspectives, and we'll be using 3 different parts of the talk. First, a look back, a review at what brought us to this point of where we are in early 2016. What are some of the most relevant trends locally and nationally? I think that's necessary because it will help us explain and understand where we are as we look to go forward. That's the second portion of the talk. I think it's important for me to acknowledge and address what are some of the critical priorities as we go through some of the challenging times and the opportunities that are in front of us. So what are the priorities? And third, culture and climate with respect to our people, the value of our talent, because that is foundational. We can't do anything without a strong culture and climate. And then we'll wrap up with Q&A. Starting with the first section, and I will point out that across the bottom of the slides, you'll see kind of a meter, if you will. As I go through the slides, you'll be able to see where we are organizationally in terms of this. And I know in some of my earlier discussions, I haven't had that. I think it's helpful. I hope you, in your critiques of this, give me your feedback. And I do get plenty of feedback, and I value it all. Among the more positive things, and there are others that I'll sprinkle in throughout this talk, some of the things that have just recently come to the surface is the global exposure that we'll have next week. We've been working on this in very, very short order. I cannot begin to tell you how the organizations that are involved, from PBS, WUWM, part of the hosts for the Democratic National Debate, have said, what a great team we have that is making this room available. And there will also be 400 media people from around the world that will be all over our campus beginning next week for the Thursday night debates. So this is an important amount of exposure that we will have. Fundraising and giving from our great philanthropic development and alumni relations team is on a pace that we've never been before. I'll talk more about that in terms of some of the priorities for 2016. Our sustainability recognition. We received notice recently that UW System has identified UWM as the only campus in this state to be forwarded to the U.S. Department of Education for a recognition as a Green Ribbon School. This is a remarkable accomplishment, and we should all feel proud of this, especially the work that's led by Kate Nelson. HLC, last year we received recognition of our reaccreditation, which underscores the value, the quality, and the impact of the work that you all have on our work together. Panther Athletes, it was recognized 2 weeks ago that they have achieved collectively their highest GPA in the history of UWM. 3.3 overall GPA, with 28 students achieving a perfect 4.0, showing they're leaders not just in the athletic field, but in the classroom as well. WUWM was recognized by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting for their work in the Precious Lives, Project Milwaukee series, which focuses on those affected by gun violence. So those are just the starting points of some of the pieces that we'll see. Now we'll see if our meter across the bottom works. How about that? So the second area, it's not as bad as a tenure or a full professor case that I saw one time where somebody had ka-ching every time a slide changed. So I'm sparing you that. Some of my colleagues here know and will never forget that presentation. But there are, with respect to budget and statutory changes, there's 4 themes that pervade this, and you've seen these headlines. They've been out for some time. We have our op-ed from Professor David Petering in the top left side, where our tenure system isn't broke, don't fix it. That's one of the themes that we've seen. We've seen the budgetary issues with respect to the financial budget piece. We've also seen the theme around the shared governance, and more recently, a number of bills regarding affordability. In fact, the legislature right now is looking at 400 different bills, and a number of them do deal with issues around affordability. So this is in the 4, as well as what we'll probably hear from our presidential candidates, the debate candidates next week, where they have different platforms around a number of college affordability issues. Another powerful theme, both at the state level as well as nationally, deals with competition for students. First, let me talk about competition for students and the enrollment situation in Wisconsin, and then I'll talk a little bit about this slide. What we know in Wisconsin is that since 2010, we've had 1,200 fewer high school students graduating per year. So the pool of available students has been shrinking. That trend will likely continue for some time. In southeastern Wisconsin, if you're interested, we could talk through even more specifically the demographics. What we know at UWM is that we are a little bit ahead of the national trend, where enrollments declined 2% last year. We were about 3%. And what's driving that is the fact that 18 to 22-year-olds, it's 2%, but at 24 and above, the decline is about 4%. Part of that is a stronger economy that affects it, but a lot of it is the demographics. So at UWM, the average undergraduate, and I checked the numbers, Helene Hickson helped put many of the specific details together, and we looked into this again today, and our average undergraduate graduates over the last 3 years between 25 and 26 years old at the undergraduate level. So you can see trends that affect older students much more affect us. What this shows at the national level, you've probably seen this by now, this is basically a 25-year review and projection forward. The first part, over on this part of the slide, shows that from 1996 to 2010, there was on average a 2.8% compound average growth rate in the number of college students nationally. If that trend had continued, we would see on the dotted line a projection that is 3.8 million students more than what we have enrolled in colleges today nationally. Because what we have both currently and projected is, starting in 2010, a 1.2% compound annual growth through 2021. What results from that is the slowdown in enrollment growth, which we have seen and we're part of, and also the competition within systems, which we're experiencing. And if you think about this, you also have increased supply of educational possibilities with the rise of the for-profit institutions. So the two together, a declining demographic and then more options available, creates a significant challenge in terms of competition for students. Now, bundle that, and you see how the story is rolling forward here. If you put this together, this is data that came out last week. The source is Grapevine, but what Grapevine is made up of is it comes from the Center for Educational Policy at Illinois State University, as well as the State Higher Education Executive Offices. The trend, you can't see all of this particularly well in terms of what the key says there, but those states that are darker blue have a better financial support from their states. Those that are darker red are ones that are in a more challenging disinvestment type of situation from their state. This, in the white states, the data are not available. And you can imagine, I understand from what I know about Illinois, they would probably be in the red. This is for the last year alone in terms of state disinvestments. I don't know about Pennsylvania. But what this means is that Wisconsin is one of the more challenged states from the perspective of state support. No surprise, not telling you anything we don't know, but that's important background to explain in particular this. This is the #1 driver why tuition has gone up across the country. This is a plight that public education, especially higher ed, has experienced. And this data from this particular slide, or these data, show in 2013 the student debt was $1.1 trillion, and you remember there was a lot of headlines at the time about student debt exceeding credit card debt. Today, this number is even higher. 2015 data show that this student debt load approached $1.3 trillion, which is why you're seeing tremendous press. You're seeing a lot of politicians, as well as campus administrators, very concerned about this. Now let's bring it home. In Wisconsin, we have 75% of all college students graduate with some amount of student debt. Nationally, the figure is 70%, so we're slightly above that, 75% in Wisconsin, 70% nationally. Nationally, the average student graduates with $28,000. In Wisconsin, the average graduate of system schools that we have data for across the UW system and beyond is about $31,000. At UWM, it's a little bit higher than that. The recent data are a little bit higher. Now that is because of the financial stresses that exist with a lot of the students given the population that we serve. So that's important background. Across campus, there have been a number of issues, and I don't have time today to go into all of these different ones, but at the top, you know there has been a gun debate in the state. We have a bill that's currently being reviewed. I believe that Assembly Speaker Voss said that there's probably not going to be this issue taken up in the Assembly this year. I find that to be very good news, and you know our stance on it, the statements that I've made, the collective statements from all UW system police chiefs, what they have also supported in terms of not wanting to advance that bill. Black Lives Matter and other racial issues have surfaced on a number of campuses. The center, that 94, if you can't read the script, it basically is a survey of mental health professionals on campuses that have all indicated this is even more significant as an issue. The bottom right, we have freedom of speech issues across all of our campuses. And in the top right, you can see one that is particularly concerning, which deals with sexual violence. This issue is so important. I've spoken about it before. I created in March a task force to address this. This was a task force on sexual violence prevention, reporting, and response. Vice Chancellors Liberty and Prince were the executive sponsors, and we were had our leads for this. Sue McCarthy from the Women's Resource Center, Professor Bill Keith, and Nelita Cortez, our interim director of Equity and Diversity Services, co-led a team of more than 24 people that just did a great job submitting to me a report in December. Has 46 recommendations centered around 13 different goals. I've been meeting with members of the cabinet and other leadership on campus to talk about the implementation after we prioritize the different recommendations. There's a website that was created. You can see it here, and this, of course, this whole presentation will be available after the plenary today. So the final slide, and you see our meter works across the bottom. The final slide in the review portion is the budget activities. On Friday, we had our third campus budget forum since I've addressed you last in a plenary. We've had no shortage of in-depth meetings, campus discussions, communication that's gone out. And what I'd ask you to take a look at is within that graphic, you can see namely the different groups that have been addressing a number of different aspects regarding our budget. There's some things, of course, that aren't shown here, but this is a highlight of some of the critical elements. The Budget Planning Task Force that has worked closely with a lot of schools and colleges and governance groups to figure out for 16 and 17 biennial budgets how to address the cuts at the level that we got from the state. The Budget Model Working Group has been working for the last couple of years on how do we develop a new budget model that will address many of the shortcomings of the previous budget model, but also work in alignment and support of our strategic priorities. The Budget Communication Task Force has been meeting regularly for both internal communication, but especially focusing on external advocacy and communication. The COET, or the Chancellor's Campus Organization and Effectiveness Team, is building on the work of all of those groups, but expanding to address the challenge that we have with between a $30 and $35 million structural deficit that is a function of events that have occurred over the last 10 years that we're now having to take into account. You can see that toward the right side, what we're trying to determine is very clearly how to allocate resources, development structure, and operations in an inclusive manner, in a way that does bring a lot of our campus into the discussion. And of course, shared governance is foundational, and it is not only formative for how we're advancing things, but also as we proceed with respect to the recommendations and the materials. So that sets the stage then for the second section of the talk. We've looked back. These are some of the dominant themes and trends that have got us where we are. And now we have to move forward with very clear direction and well understood decisions to support the priorities. And I'll outline some of the key priorities as we go forward. And the first one obviously has to be our budget. We have to address this. We have to work on these issues, as I've talked about, through COET, our Budget Planning Task Force. The one thing that I did not talk about, but I will here, and that is at the school and college level, and ultimately at the department level, everything that has to be aligned and everything that we have to work on, and really bring it down to a granular level to talk about how we will address this. I will be receiving next week the COET report. I'll be meeting with the co-chairs, and what I'd like to do is take a look at the report and understand, does it meet the charges that were given to it? To what extent does it address the financial challenges? How does it improve our organization and effectiveness? Does it go far enough? I will be combining that with the Budget Planning Task Force recommendations and all the decisions and the ways that we're managing at school and college level. And we'll make some determinations at that point about, first of all, the initial review. We'll share that with the campus, and then I will ask the governance groups to look at the recommendations, seek their input specifically, even though they have been part of this every step of the way. I'd like to get their formal recommendations, their recognition of the opportunities here, and then we'll proceed. There's two parts of our budget that I'd like to also talk about, because it's not just a way of managing through cuts, but it's also looking at how do we expand and how do we prioritize those areas if we get the additional resources. In the base budget, there's really three different categories, three areas that we've been working on and we will continue to work on. First, the UW system allocation, looking specifically at areas that we can work on with UW system support, and looking at one of the critical pieces is the task force that President Ray Cross has put together to look at what is the allocation that has occurred and what is the appropriate allocation given our research and access mission. Is it appropriate? Can we receive some additional funds through that? We're working with the legislature on this issue directly and also indirectly through our third-party advocates. So the UW system allocation continues to be an important question, and we know that there will be some movement. The question is, will it be soon enough, and will it be enough materially? The legislature, we've had, and you've heard this many times before, scores of meetings throughout 2015. We continue to do that. Tom Lujack spends at least a half day, if not a full day a week, in Madison, working directly on the Hill. I spend a fair amount of time both here in Milwaukee and occasionally in Madison, and when the time is right, a lot more in different legislative offices working on having an understanding of the impact and the role of UW-Milwaukee. So the legislature is continuing to be something that is critically important. The tuition task force is looking at what is the appropriate, reasonable tuition for UW system campuses and programs in the future. Let me explain just a little bit more on that. I serve on the tuition task force. We have been meeting since probably, I think our first meeting might have been roughly in September. This is all available on the website, UW system website. And we have our next meeting next week, and we'll be digging into the question of what are the different models, what are the different ways in which we can seek the potential for there to be appropriate and necessary tuition increases should we be allowed to do that. What we know right now is that for the last two biennial budgets, our tuition has been frozen by the legislature. It is very popular politically right now to advance the idea that that would continue. That's something that several have observed. So I don't know if we will have much leeway. If we do have the possibility of raising tuition, we also would look at the possibility of decreasing tuition for certain programs to be creative. So, for example, some of the things that we have done on this campus and in some other campuses is to look at certain programs, certain areas where we can actually reduce tuition or be more creative with how we approach this. This is something that's very important, and I would not advocate, and I don't think anybody on the task force would advocate, that we would ever see the types of tuition increases that we have before. But one of the things that I argue is that it is not good policy to continue to cap the price or tuition for any good. We saw that happen years ago from a federal policy, and we saw what happened when that was released. The challenge is costs do go up. Healthcare costs, utilities costs, maintenance facilities, payroll, they just naturally rise. The UW system had 734 fewer positions last year, but our payroll still went up modestly with 734 fewer positions. This is an example of how cost cannot be maintained. You cannot drive all costs down naturally. So what that means is if tuition can never be increased, ever, we would have to make more significant cuts. And I think you can all appreciate what a modest tuition increase can do for our campus. Not at the levels that we had before, the 6.8% tuition increase that we had from roughly 2001 through 2011, 6.8%, but even less than half of that would make a huge difference, would take care of all the structural deficit issues, that alone, even at the current level of enrollment. So that's why I'm arguing for a modest tuition increase, because it reflects the reality that we're in. On the capital budget front, there's half a dozen projects, both in this and the next biennial budget. Some of these you might say, well, I've seen those before. You're right. The reason you've seen those before is because virtually all capital requests were vetoed, were simply not approved in the last capital biennial budget. There's a significant challenge with respect to bonding and a resistance for that to go forward. So for most of these projects, over the last 6 weeks, we have been spending a fair amount of time in discussion with people who are in the facilities and finance and administration side in Madison. People in our staff in different areas for these different projects have been spending a lot of time working on these. Real quickly, the Northwest Quad, that is our top campus priority for this biennial budget. This is the old Columbia St. Mary's, and the gist of this is that we've got about 500,000 square feet that we cannot use in that building simply because of infrastructure, just the basic requirements to have that building HVAC, electrical, compliant with code. At a $70 million level, approximately 70 to 75, we could do remarkable things. And this is really just the next phase to allow ultimately what will be many of our schools and colleges to have space in the Northwest Quad. The Innovation Campus, we have not had approval in the past, even though earlier it had been enumerated, for the Integrated Research Center at the Innovation Campus. This is the next expansion. We've been told by the legislature that we will need to have partners for that building, for that project to expand. What I mean by that is substantial financial partnership. So we'd be looking at raising half of that funding for that project externally. To support that, though, what we've been doing is working across a number of areas. Both Professors Mark Harris and Paula Reiner have been working on this by advancing academically 5 different areas that include neurosciences, aging, biomedical engineering, other areas that would look at building the collaborative research in addition to the work that we're doing with our Clinical Translation Sciences Institute and others to form even stronger partnerships that do a pull, if you will, a pull for arguing why those partnerships could be very important. On the basketball practice facility, we have between our SEG fees and the commitments from donors, we have a substantial amount of progress toward that. And this is what we call a program revenue project, PR type of funding, where there's commitments that have been made and a lot of momentum. So we need the approval. We've been having extensive discussions about that. Our Lubar Center for Entrepreneurship and Welcome Center, so that should have Welcome Center with it. That program has been enumerated. That project has been something that was approved last year, and that will be something that we would anticipate by late 2018 or early 2019, we would see in the neighborhood of a 22 to 24,000 square foot building proceed. This is something that will develop, it will have opportunities for every student and all our faculty and staff across the campus to participate, and it's a hugely important piece of real estate for our Welcome Center purposes, where 20,000 students and family members, friends, come through our Welcome Center today every year, and this will be a wonderful space and a powerful opportunity to welcome them. The Welcome Center is in there. I apologize. That is Entrepreneurship and Welcome Center. The Student Union has occupied a tremendous amount of our time, not just recently, but over the last several years. We spent an extensive amount of time over the break, both in our planning and our meeting time in Madison, talking about this project. This is very large. This is the largest of these projects in terms of scale and size, and we know it's needed. There's no argument from Madison, there's no argument from System about the need for this. Where the argument falls is really with respect to the cost and the student SEG fees associated with this. So we're having to manage that. We're having to have additional meetings. We have specifically 5 gates that we have to go through in terms of the discussion that we'll be having. That will include further discussion with the Capital Finance Committee, the Board of Regents, legislators, another student referendum in the fall, and a couple of other steps along the way to move this along. We don't think that there would be a slowdown in when the building would actually be built by the steps that we've got to take, but we do have to take them. And then, specifically, what this is heading toward is the absolutely critical need that we have for a new chemistry building. System evaluators, people from the DOA and others that have looked at that building know, and Ray Cross, our president of our system, knows well the challenges that we have with that building, but these other projects are in front of it, and that's why we've got to make progress and have to move that forward. The chemistry building serves as a gateway for so many of our STEM classes, and it's foundational to so many areas on our campus, and it's just one of the high priorities that we've got. So while there's many other areas of physical need, infrastructural aspects, these are the 6 that are the ones that are part of the capital budget today. Enrollment and student success, I can't talk about budgetary issues without then talking about our student success and student enrollment. From a priority, our student success remains paramount. Their graduation, their retention, the quality of the education experience that they receive while they're here, preparation for life after college. Again, going back to the Renee Spivak example at the very beginning, remarkable successes that so many of our students achieve. That's so much of why we're here and what we do. But enrollments have gone from 31,000 in 2010 to 27,000 today. You might remember a previous plenary where then Chancellor Mike Lovell showed the numbers, and he showed the projections and the trends, and he talked about the sustainability and the relative unsustainability if we do not stop that slide. Today, at 27,000 students, we are in that type of challenge situation, and we've got to stabilize, we've got to turn that around. So it's in that context that our Provost, Johannes Britz, and our Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, Michael Liberty, have co-chaired the Chancellor's Enrollment Management Action Team. And I stress action because this group is responsible for undertaking a number of different action steps and a number of different things, many of which are listed here, but there's much more that they do. They meet every other week, and then I meet every other week with the co-chairs. What they've done recently is identify some of the most important key markets for where our students come from and how can we elevate those even more. We've seen that in the Chicagoland area, that's a huge growth market, and we're pursuing that vigorously. On-site admission events have increased to very high levels, both on-site in terms of what we're doing on our campuses, but also in terms of what we're doing with our two-year counterparts and high school visits. We're starting this month the Student Success Collaborative with EAB, Education Advisory Board. We're developing a strategic enrollment management plan. Brian Troyer, Laura Pedrick are co-leading this effort. You can see more about this 5-year plan that will be done by this summer at the website listed here. I want to comment on the role of all of us, everything that we all can do to attract, retain, and help our students graduate, and why this is such a critically important aspect of our future. I'll talk more in what can you do because of all the questions that I get with so many people who want to help. But as I look across the room and I think about everything that you do, it's powerfully important. And it deals with the connection, it deals with the quality of interactions, it deals with the things that so many of you do. But sometimes I hear, well, I don't have that much impact on enrollment. I'm in this role or I'm in that role. I'm not necessarily on the front line. I'm not a lab assistant, I'm not a faculty member, I'm not an advisor. But I have to tell you that every single person in this room, every single person on our campus, if you're in HR, if you're in maintenance, custodial services, if you're in the police department, any role on our campus, you play a vitally important role. And I'm going to give many examples later in a couple slides down the road about exactly how you make a difference. And you'll see that in one of our videos coming up. Vice Chancellor Pat Borger, careful Pat, I almost promoted you to Chancellor there. That's a dangerous place to be. Vice Chancellor Pat Borger for our development and alumni relations and her team have done a remarkable job. They deserve recognition and credit, and let me tell you a little bit about why. What they've helped do is reshape our campaign. It's today called Made in Milwaukee, Shaping the World. It is having tremendous traction, resonance with our donor base. People relate to this. They see the local engagement, but they also know the global impact of UWM. It's just remarkable how it's really been a great rallying cry. It focuses on these three key pillars, and I think you can appreciate in the past it wasn't as crisp, it wasn't as clear. What could be more important than students, our research, and engagement? And this is sequential. With successful students and powerful research premise, those two naturally give us that remarkable ability to meet the needs that exist in this community. More on that in a moment. But those are the pillars, and why that's so essential is that 80% of our students receive some form of financial aid, and the need is greater by far than what we can begin to meet. So scholarships are critically important, as well as the support for research and opportunities to engage. Today, we are at $93 million, which represents 53% of our $175 million goal. If we make progress as we anticipate and on the rate that we are, we could raise that goal. We'll be making a determination about when we go public and announce that goal later this year. I can tell you that we have significant gifts in the queue, and we anticipate that within 2 months, I will be able to share with you $100 million is our recent area that we surpassed, which is just remarkable. And what it means is that there's significant belief and support for UWM. People believe in what you're doing. They believe in everything that we mean to the community and the specific areas that so many donors are passionate about. I recently had one of the past Board of Regents presidents, a person who's responsible for giving UWM almost $2 million. He said, the reason why I've come to really believe in UWM is how much difference I see you making in the community. And that gives me all the confidence that I need to support you even further. That's just one example, but it's powerful when people give those kind of testimonials. This is one of the hearts of this talk, and I'm going to drill down into it. I think this is meritorious of significant time. There will be, as long as I am chancellor at UWM, no changes to our research mission. None. We will remain a vibrant, highly visible, very engaged research university with an access mission. That is essential. It is what we are. It is what we do. It's why so many of us came here, why so many of us are here to make that kind of difference. We are engaged. We believe in access, but we are, make no mistake about it, a research university. We serve, along with Madison, as one of two campuses in our system that is the doctoral granting research universities. You saw my statement in the research about the importance of a research university that Chris O'Connor referred to in the introduction. This is critical for us to continue, and it's a powerful differentiator. We create the knowledge. We write the articles, we provide the textbook source material, and we are the ones that others learn from and use. This is why so many organizations and individuals want to partner with UW-Milwaukee. It's the ability to take that research, and whether it's a local engagement, national, or global, and all you have to think about is some of the work that we have received such recognition for in terms of particularly many of the hard sciences that we have tremendous applications, whether it's in the cancer research, Alzheimer research, the types of things we do in physics, and so many areas across chemistry, biochemistry, biological sciences. The list goes on and on and on. I'll speak about virtually every school and college and every department by the time I'm done. We'll see about that. That's, as you know, the risk. We have partnerships that allow us to solve societal issues as well as make a huge difference and impact on the state's economy. We have centers for aging and translational research, smart manufacturing, energy storage, Center for Advanced Embedded Systems, our Clinical Translation Sciences Institute, many partnerships across the College of Letters and Science, College of Health Science, College of Nursing, School of Education, Peck School of the Arts. I could go on and on and on. And I want to stress how all our research is critical, and why efforts to prioritize and say this school or college or this department is more important is going to not be successful for UWM. Whether you're in applied research or basic research, we encompass the sciences, the professions, the arts, the humanities, and social sciences, and every part of UWM matters. Let me pull aside for a moment and just tell you why I believe in this so strongly, and I know many of you do as well. Most of you know, thank you, Chris, again for that introduction, my background. I was in business. I didn't plan on going to college. And I got to a certain level in the organization for which I was working, and they said, you need a college degree before you can go any further. And I said, what do I need a degree in? And they said, well, you're in business, it makes sense to get a degree in business. And so I pursued that. But along the way, I started taking, as you know, through our GER programs there, we called them our breadth and depth courses. I took a number of other courses, and I really got hooked on English. And I said, I'm going to become an English major as well. And I didn't get all the way done with it. I got 38 degree credits in English instead of 55 that I needed for the major. But what I learned was a number of things that I credit with how I was able to do better, frankly, in academic classes than anything else. How I was able to think and read and evaluate things critically. I know many of you would argue if I can do those things or not at this point. I appreciate that. I wonder sometimes myself when I hear my kids or family talk about me. But that's aside. I do think as I look at what my foundation of learning was, but most importantly, a love of knowledge and an appreciation for global experiences and perspectives that I wouldn't have had. And I don't mean in any way to denigrate any other field or what I have in a background, but it gave me an appreciation, and it makes me completely understand and believe why we have to be a comprehensive research university. And what I mean by that is grounded in liberal arts, in humanities, that we have a complete education. That's critically important and must be continued to be supported. When I come back to UWM in the context of this talk, and I talk about how every part of UWM matters, not just from research, but from education, I have to tell you that This is why we learned today, you might have learned it yesterday, but I learned today that we have recently been acknowledged by the Carnegie classification among the 115 top research universities in high research activity category. I think we should all give ourselves a great round of applause here for this. Any challenge to our role, any challenge to our place in the UW system is unwarranted with respect to any questions about this. We have built a remarkable prowess. So this research I've talked about in a number of ways also has great impact on our students. You're going to see a video now about not just the work that our students are involved with and the impact that it has, but also with respect to how future students, those in high school today, are affected by our research.
Today we're going to Seymour Community High School in Seymour, Wisconsin. What I really hope for most, not whether the student has become a junior scientist and somehow become involved with science, is for them to realize that science is a way of learning about the world around them.
We are testing zebrafish embryos. You know, sometimes in biology you grow mold on bread, but having this freedom, take some live animals and expose them to different things, I thought that was a really good opportunity.
By UWM giving us this opportunity, it has broadened opportunities for people all over my school and all over the state, and really expanded upon the idea that kids can be some really great researchers.
One thing that we've been really impressed with UW-Milwaukee is the support that they've given us as teachers. They didn't just hand us something and walk away. They are still there for us whenever we need them.
We're living in a century that is just saturated with science and technology. And if you don't have a citizenry that really tunes in and understands and can think about science, we're in bad shape. The program that we offer is funded by the National Institutes of Health. It's called SEPA, or Science Education Partnership Award Program. This year we had 47 teachers, 31 schools, 11 in Milwaukee, 20 outside of metropolitan Milwaukee. So this is a major program that is impacting schools around the state.
Getting kids engaged really that's the first step, and that really drives everything else.
All my other science classes usually just sit down, listen, take notes, boring. But this is you're actually getting up and doing stuff with the experiment, and it's a great experience.
The work that we are doing in this class can eventually lead us to discover more problems that lead causes. In simple terms, we're taking fish that are exposed to lead as embryos, and we're going to see if it affects their learning pattern.
UWM is a research university. When we use the term research university, you don't want to sort of separate out and say, well, here's the research and here's the teaching. The two go absolutely together with one another. The whole goal is to sort of expand the frontiers of knowledge, or you could say the frontiers of teaching.
The amount of time that the UWM professors put into this, and the amount of support, not just to us, but to all the other schools around the state, we wouldn't be able to do this without them. And we just had this fabulous experience in our classroom, but without everybody at UWM, that would have never happened. So to me, it means everything.
There's a lot of feelings I get when I come out of these classrooms. I feel fantastic. I feel this great joy that actually we are doing something positive for these kids. They know how to take scientific information and apply it to their lives. They get it, and this is really exciting.
So Professor Petering, I hope I hadn't stolen any of your thunder, but boy, that was great. Great perspectives. What I'd like to do beyond recognizing Dave is point out this is an example of the interdisciplinary kind of work that happens on our campus. Let me tell you who is involved with this particular initiative. We have Professor Craig Berg from the School of Education. We have Michael Carvan, School of Freshwater Sciences professor. We have Associate Scientist Henry Tomaszewicz, who's in Bioengineering, Imaging, and Testing Lab. And we also have senior scientist Daniel Weber from the College of Letters and Science. Truly interdisciplinary type of work. So as I proceed, I'd like to share with you a little bit more about partnerships that make a difference based on the work that all these other activities provide, but this is what is important for a future priority. Milwaukee is comprised of two different worlds. One that is, as I've talked about before, one that is revitalizing, it's experiencing growth, a resurgence, whether it's in the city or in the suburban areas. At the same time, there are the outgrowths of poverty. There's income and achievement gaps. There's substantial challenges across many of our neighborhoods that are driven by a number of different factors, hugely complex, historic. UWM is well positioned to accelerate and address issues for both of these. And you will hear more about some of the things that we are doing in the next year in terms of taking on some of these issues to make a measurable difference. In the education world, we have long been an important factor, important with respect to our research and the provision of the future and current educators. But we have joined forces with Milwaukee Public Schools and MATC to make a powerful difference across our better than 140,000 students collectively for a talent pipeline, successful graduation, successful options for public education. In the business world, hundreds of different partnerships focusing on academic, research, and applied types of projects. In healthcare, the list is significant and immense, not just in the 4 schools and colleges at UWM that have health in their name, but those that really encompass many other parts of our campus. A couple of the key pieces that we're working on today are some of the pipelines for helping underrepresented students from Milwaukee have careers with the medical college and Aurora Healthcare. Significant pipelines and funding potential for that. Entrepreneurship, I've talked about before in terms of our commitment that we have made. You've seen that in the Journal Sentinel op-ed. That is critical for the support from the community. I have created a group that started meeting. It's led by our professor in history, Rob Smith, and our Peck School of the Arts dean, Scott Emmons, a group called Social Equity, Justice, and Entrepreneurship Compact, affectionately referred to as SAJAC. So this group is going to be working on prioritizing and identifying areas across our campus that many areas are working on, not to reinvent the wheel, but to help provide focus and much more synergy around some of the common efforts that we have. More on that in the near future. I want to stand back and talk briefly about the importance of partnerships and engagement. Today, roughly 15% of our budget, maybe a little bit more, we'll see what the final numbers are at the end of the year, come from the state. That means 85% of our budget has to come from somewhere. Tuition, obviously, is a big part of that. Grants, loans, indirects, things like that. But it's also through philanthropy and the types of support that individuals in different partnership opportunities can help us to provide and continue providing the educational mission. It's also the support of these individuals as they work with elected officials. And elected officials are critical for the future support as a public entity. So these partnerships and engagement, they're the backbone. Those are the things that are absolutely critical as we go forward. The final piece of this with respect to what we have here in terms of our priorities is what is at stake at Wisconsin, what's at stake for Wisconsin, and just a few examples. Collectively, if we continue with these priorities, the types of things that we can continue to do, and we can think about other areas that are in great need in the state. I just happen to pick some that we know well in terms of the critical aspects, what our future would be like. What we have contributed, UWM alone, has contributed 730 nurses over the last 3 years. We would have that many fewer if we cannot continue. Now, by the way, those are not just graduates of UWM. Those are ones that have achieved RN. Dean Lundin can correct me if I'm wrong, but those are the ones that have actually mastered the RN certification and expectations. We have even more graduates. We have 500 accounting graduates. Think about the future with that fewer and what that would mean for a lot of organizations that would have to go elsewhere. 1,051 fewer newly licensed teachers. Again, Dean Shoho could tell us that actually there's more graduates than that over the last 3 years, but these are the ones that are licensed. And finally, 1,100 degreed engineers. A remarkable number and hugely central to so much of our economic development in the future. We know that engineering types of companies and what applications can be made are foundational. More on that in the Q&A if you're interested. What this means then, collectively, is that we need to even go further on offense. And what I mean by that is that last year we were on the receiving end of some budgetary challenges, especially at the beginning of the year. We began moving on offense very quickly, and we need to do even more of that, and we will. It's through grit and determination. It's that UWM spirit that has allowed us to become national, internationally prominent as a research university and locally as an access institution. We will forcefully and more directly communicate the effects of no longer being able to provide this affordable quality education, and we need to all continue to send the message that an investment in UWM pays off. This is achieved through tremendous leveraging. For a relatively modest investment from the state, we return $1.5 billion in economic impact. Nationally, you can see the Federal Reserve data that shows that for every dollar invested in a college student, the U.S. gets $7.46 back. There's a number of things behind that. So as I shift gears and wrap up toward the third and final section of this talk, I want to talk a little bit about why we're here, which means at the core, what are aspects of our culture and climate that bring us all together. This might sound a little bit existential and out there, but as I think about you and us, what we do together and the impact that we all have, I think it's a calling. People go into different professions for different reasons. And the common theme behind education is people who want to make a difference. And this is why it's so critical to collectively not just say, what do you value, but collectively, what do we value? And that's what our culture and climate is made up of, is ultimately what we value and what we do with that. We have such remarkable talent. Each of you have gifts, and how you share that, it's phenomenal. Some of the remarkable achievements we've seen because of the things that you've done are listed here, but there's many, many more. I could spend hours on this list alone. Professor Chia Vang, an associate professor in history, will be recognized on Friday by the Board of Regents, receiving UW System Diversity Award. You will hear from her shortly on a video. UWM was awarded a gold-level American Heart Fit-Friendly Workplace based on the leadership of some key people here. Pam Conine and Sandy Smith, recognized as theater interpreters, much like our staff today. Heather and I believe Cindy are doing a wonderful job with us here today. We have the only American Sign Language program in the state, and you might have seen a cover story in the Journal Sentinel featuring Pam Conine and Sandy Smith for their work and that of our whole ASL program. Mark Zoromsky, senior lecturer in the Journal and Media Studies program, elected to the Milwaukee Press Club Hall of Fame. Our College of Nursing has been recognized for their online work nationally in the top 10 with the Students Before Profit Award. Robert Schneider, an assistant professor in urban planning, has received the Wisconsin Bike Fed Advocate of the Year Award. As a fellow bicyclist, Robert, I really appreciate your work on safety and the importance of awareness of these issues for all motorists.
Hi, my name is Bonnie Halverson.
Brian Shermer.
Sherry Halbert.
I founded the Hmong Studies program.
I'm the Associate Director for University Housing.
Academic Advisor.
I work for the UWM Police Department, you can probably tell by the uniform. And I've been here about 2.5 years.
16 years now.
A little bit over a year.
This is my 13th year at UWM. Where I am in higher education right now wasn't something that I planned. That's partly because, you know, I came to the U.S. as a 9-year-old refugee child, right? So when I grew up, I didn't know anybody who looked like me, who was a college professor. So it wasn't something I aspired to do. You know, role models are very important for, I think, for all of us.
And I just went to the 12th grade, and I have 3 daughters, and I always strive to them. Your education is the most important thing in your life.
I love the values that university brings. You know, that university pride, you feel it all over campus. This is our future.
I'm in a department that was seen as a national leader and internationally recognized in various ways. And over the long haul, I worry about that. When we talk about bringing in a new student from halfway around the world, I'm always asking myself a very real question, which is, will we have support for this student year, 2 years, 3 years down the road? So it's very sobering.
As far as being a colleague across campus and knowing that some people, positions may be changed or may go away, that's been difficult. I think even the things that we do in my department now, having to refocus, and the initiatives that we maybe wanted to put forth now that we can't and have to put back. So personally, it's been a challenge, but I'm definitely being positive. Right now it's tough, but eventually we'll get past this.
It is difficult to remain positive, largely because we see some of the impact already. And, it can be kind of demoralizing, especially because I think about, I still have a good 20 years to work. But with that said, I'm a realist, and I know that the current circumstances that we are in now require that we as an institution reevaluate how we conduct business in order to stay in business.
The way that I've been dealing with it is to realize the abundance that we have here at UWM. There is such incredible talent. There's so much will to work, even not having a lot of resources.
Sometimes the climates can be really negative, and I think it's important for all of us to recognize the parts of our job that help us stay positive, recognize those people that lift us up on campus, but there's definitely moments where it's like, wow, we're doomed. And I think we're not doomed. We're in a period of change and transition, and I think our leadership is well poised to guide us through that change and that challenge.
Our proudest moment usually comes at graduation time, when we're surrounded by all the students who are going on to bigger and brighter things and whatnot, and many of them will come up to us and thank us for our time, thank us for our service, and say, hey, do you remember you spoke with me 3 years ago about this? And knowing that I did have an interaction with them that may have changed their course of action a little bit and got them to their final goal of graduation, that's definitely our proudest moments as police officers, because that's basically why we're here.
When I went to the 2015 annual Fall Awards, just to see how, everything came up together, and I was part of that, putting that together. I felt very proud.
Sitting in the second row at the Metropolitan Opera House, watching one of our students, Catherine Henry, sing in the finals of the Metropolitan Opera National Council Award auditions. She's one of 10 chosen from 1,500 in the country. And knowing that she had grown up here at UWM, and that all of my amazing music colleagues were part of that.
My proudest moment is when someone come up to me and tell me how good a job I'm doing. That's my proudest moment right there.
I'm very happy being at UWM. It just feels that you're not in this alone.
I just see a lot of really vibrant, wonderful things happening, and I think that's a great family and community to be involved with.
I think I have more to give, and I think that there's great things that are happening in my department, in my division. I am a Milwaukee resident, and so being able to work at the institution, as I would say our city school, is great.
We haven't lost our edge just yet. I think I can tell students that, you can graduate from UWM and you can compete anywhere. You can go to anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world. The faculty teach their asses off. They're really highly committed. And so that's still there. The question is whether or not we're going to be able to do that 5 years, 10 years down the road.
You might be talking to a famous doctor or a famous author or a famous painter or a violinist at any time. The opportunity to work with them at this vulnerable age and hope them to project them into their future goals is what keeps me here, at least.
I'm a first-generation college graduate myself, and we have a lot of first-generation students. So being able to be a part of their journey and figuring out who they are as academics and as artists is really joyful for me. I just feel like it's such a privilege to be part of that discovery, and staying here allows me that opportunity on a daily basis. It's pretty amazing.
Thank you, everybody involved with that. Well, it was pretty authentic, wasn't it? Yeah, very genuine. These are tremendous colleagues, and they've helped so much. And I apologize, I didn't set the stage for that. This was to mirror what we heard from our students in the fall plenary. This is really, from the employees' perspective, some of why they're here in their words. So the final comment is, in addition to the help that they provided, I get questions often about how can I help? What are the types of things that I can do more of? And I wanted to, first of all, acknowledge we need everybody's help. And I told you I would develop this idea. There's a lot of ideas that are on this slide. And let me just point out a few key points. A number of you, every single day, do tremendous things. And yet, we, in the context of where we are today, ask for your help. We need so much more. And there are several examples that show that so much more, that show what people are doing. You saw in the video, the first one on research, you saw how our interdisciplinary efforts are reaching out to high schools. I told you about Renee Spivak, who helped develop and expand a program to take physics education into middle school and high schools. We're doing things right now in areas of recruitment and retention, but there's a number of additional ideas that are up here. And there's areas, and some of these I've heard about for some time, and I'm really impressed with them, and I know that there's many more examples, but I'd like to share with you that what we see today with some of the things in biosciences, for the last 4 years, they have had programs, it's called Open Advising program, where students at any level can drop in, and they do this a couple days a semester, where faculty and staff, advisors, department chairs come by, and they meet with individuals and they talk about things without an appointment. They just drop by and spend a lot of time on this. They've expanded and enhanced their advising work. Their faculty and staff and TAs are all involved. They're doing more with specific research types of experiences, engaging in undergraduate and graduate research programs, but they're focusing especially in some of their work on transfer students and those that are first generation, those students that might not have had that type of exposure and understand the high impact both learning and retention practices. There's efforts underway in a number of schools and colleges that this has expanded and helped grow across, where we look at graduation, because if you can get better advice about what classes to take when, it can really help you with time to degree. But also that individual attention makes a huge difference for our students in terms of having that type of engagement for retention and ultimately graduation and impact. So congratulations and thank you for all of that work. As I wrap up here, the key ideas, if I can emphasize some of these things that I hope you take from this. First, what I've tried to do is reaffirm our central purpose and that the momentum of UWM, which is strong, must continue. We mean too much. We mean too much to this community and to all the individuals across this state and larger region. We are transformational with what we do. You all make impressive contributions and they're recognized locally and internationally. The second point is I've tried to enlighten everybody and continue to expand on the significance of the challenges that are in front of us and describe at a fairly high level, because we don't have all the details yet, our plan for going forward, but I can assure you that the work that is coming forward from our budget planning work, that which will be involved with our shared governance through COET, our schools and colleges, we will lead this well. We face challenging times, and we're facing them head on, and we're going even more on offense. The third key point is the underscoring of why we're here, what we do, the importance of our students, faculty, and staff. We matter more than ever. Your past and future contributions are central ingredients in our success. So again, I ask for your help, your patience, and your understanding that none of us asked for or created the fiscal and political situation or scenario that we're in today, but we have to manage it, and we will. Thank you for your service, your commitment, and I also appreciate you being here and listening today. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions, if you have any. Yes, Professor Patrick.
So this might strike some of you as nonsensical, but I find the conversation about our fiscal situation dominated by a language of cuts. I think that is remarkably defeatist in character, and I prefer myself to talk about increases in net revenue. One way of accomplishing such increases is through cuts. The other is through increasing gross revenue. There are many untapped markets nationally and regionally. And just talking about cuts is not a way to motivate development to reach those markets. So, if you have any comment.
I do, yeah. First of all, I completely appreciate the need for revenue, for growth, and for untapped markets. And this is why I talked about in partnerships and in identifying opportunities, recognizing the shrinkage that we've had in state support, why we need to find those alternative sources of revenue. I had to balance a lot of this talk. To your point, I was worried about going too far the other way, meaning that if I don't talk seriously enough about the financial situation, that we gloss it over and we treat it as if it weren't. So if I went too far into the cuts and hit a defeatist tone, that was certainly not my intent. I am trying to lay out the realities that face us. I think there's no question about that. But we welcome your ideas and anybody else's about ways in which we can grow revenue streams, look at the positive aspects for the future.
Well, I in your talk, in particular, just the general response.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 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 So I think what you're suggesting is reframing how we position this in terms of some of the opportunities and ways that people can engage. I would agree with that. Yeah. Okay. Other questions or comments? Okay. Well, thank you again for engaging and attending this afternoon, and I look forward to continuing our progress with you all. Thanks.